All right. Hey, Manny.
Hi. Hi, Radha. How are you?
I cannot hear you for some reason, so let me see if it's on my end. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly fine.
Wonderful. Awesome. We made it work. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. And you?
I am great. Well, everybody, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Radha Patel, and I'm the founder and CEO of Single to Shaadi, which is a South Asian matchmaking platform based in the US and Canada. A couple of years ago, we spun off this segment called Second Time Shaadi, which is the account that I'm joining you from today. And I was able to connect with our friend Manny Graywall, who's on the call, on the meeting with us. And we decided, you know what, this is such an important conversation. We need to bring it to the forefront. And that's what we decided to do. So please let me introduce you to Manny. Manny is the founder of Brown Girl Divorce, who is also in the IG Live with us today. Her mission is to break the stigma and create a community where divorce is normalized and women feel empowered to take control of their lives. So thank you all for joining us today. Manny, would you like to introduce yourself before we dive into some of these questions?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. So I'm Manny, and I love to say, happily divorced. It's been about 3+ years, and I feel like it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life. And, there was a day where I was, feeling very down, even though it was my decision to walk away. And I decided, like, I don't really have anybody to talk to about the things that I'm feeling. And, like, my cousins, like my friends and family, they just don't understand it. So I really wanted to connect and relate with people. So I started my account anonymously, just to kind of put out my feelings and thoughts out there and see if anyone related. And sure enough, there was a lot of people that resonated with what I had to say. And all of a sudden, I felt a lot less alone in that journey.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I have to say, when I started following you, it was those inspirational posts that you were putting, the quotes, the acceptance messages, that it's okay.
Mhm.
And I think that really, I love your mission because there's a lot of people out there, myself included, who are like, we can coach you, we can get, help you get back on track. But we forget the point in the middle where we have to sit with what happened, grieve, even though if it's our choice, you still have to grieve that relationship. So Manny, maybe we could talk a little bit about starting with your origin story, but maybe let's talk a little bit about what you're trying to share or help people learn about themselves. And I think a big topic was about abuse and understanding what exactly is abuse in a relationship, even if it's not physical. So could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so abuse, yeah, comes in so many different forms, and I think we fail to recognize that. I was, one of those people. I was like, oh, abuse is physical. He needs to hit me for me to walk away. But no, that's not all it's limited to. There's so many different types. We've got emotional, sexual abuse, financial abuse, and nowadays with like how we use technology, there's digital abuse as well, um, and and just like how that abuse like reflects in you, like over time, it really changes who you are as a person. At first, it might just be people not really being able to connect with you. But after some time, you lose that connection to yourself as well. Um,
Because it's triggering. I'm sure you're also like abuse is in the eye of the person, like the whole. So we don't know what's going on in that person's mind, and anything could be triggering. So imagine the anxiety that you're living with in a situation like that.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. So like living with someone like that can be just like walking on eggshells. You're like constantly on guard about what move you're making, like hoping that you don't upset your partner, hoping that you know, you didn't like you don't even know what you're doing wrong half the time. So it's hard to be like, we're human. Like it's hard to be a perfect person. There's no such thing as a perfect person. We're all flawed. And from time to time, we make mistakes, innocent mistakes. And, you know, they don't always deserve that insane reaction that you're getting. Like, that's like, you have to pay attention to a person's reaction. Like, are they blowing it out of proportion? You're just like, oh, like, I don't know, like I left the stove on, for example. That could be like a very innocent mistake, and they come out and freak out at you, and you're like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, that was just a one-time thing. But their reaction is just like, whoa, this is the end of the world.
It sounds like, I know we're going to dive into this next, but it sounds like when there's abuse, exerting control, and unregulated emotions, sounds like this guy might be a narcissist. What do you think about that word? I know it's very therapy speak, but we've been seeing it kind of reapplied in romantic relationships to help explain these unacceptable behaviors.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes it sounds like this big buzzword that's been thrown around. But it's not just a buzzword. Like, you have to look at a person as a whole. Like, there are certain narcissistic traits, and someone might possess one or two of them, but maybe they don't really define the person as a whole. But when it's on multiple facets, then that's where it becomes a problem and a concern. So there's lots of different things you can identify to help you beforehand, like when you're getting into a relationship. Just pay attention to little things, like how do they communicate with maybe the service staff? Are they rude to them? Or maybe they're super polite to service staff, and then the minute you go back to your car, they're rude to you, and you're just like, you were just like the nicest, sweetest person there, and now who is this? Like, who is this other person? Um, and I think you can also pay attention to what kind of comments and jokes are they making. You know, are they joking about like, oh, a woman should do this, a woman should do that, a woman should wear this, like, you know, and then they might just say, haha, it's just a joke. Of course it doesn't work like this in real life. That's usually an indicator that no, they traditionally think that way. And they're just kind of trying to gauge your reaction to the thing. They're just like saying, how are you reacting to my jokes? If you're laughing it off, maybe you agree with me. But, you know, sometimes like a person like me can be a bit of, I struggle sometimes in awkward situations like that. So my reaction sometimes is just being like, oh, ha ha ha, that's so funny. Because I don't want to call them out on it.
Yeah.
But I think that's very important, is to find your voice and speak up, because a narcissist is attracted to a person who is like very demure, that buzzword going.
Very demure, very mindful.
And so they very much prey on people like that, because they will take it. They will take their loud like anger bursts. They will take their rage. They will be their punching bag, and at the end of the day, still show them so much love and respect. Um, and and in that process, you know, you just like end up losing yourself, because uh, you know, you're trying so hard to please them, and in a way they kind of make you feel like you're not doing anything right. It's never perfect, it's not good enough, and so you're constantly trying to like better yourself and improve yourself, but really, like, no matter what you do, it will never be good enough for them.
Manny, you said a lot there, so I want to unpack some things. But first, Devangani, thank you so much for your comment. She said that she really enjoys the bare bones way that you're kind of addressing this topic and putting it across, Manny. So good job. She asked, she mentioned too that sometimes the guy will say, you're too sensitive, or, you know, like putting it back on you, like it's your fault that you don't agree with him. Or when you mentioned about the joke, there's definitely a nugget of truth in all types of joking scenario situations. And I think that's how a narcissist or any person explores boundaries.
Yeah.
they know how far they can push you by using this innocent tactic of flirting, joking, banter.
Mm-hmm.
That all kind of summarizes why red flags are so important, and kind of understanding what is something to look out for, which is what your page is really doing a good job in teaching women what to look out for, and then how to address it. So thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, no problem.
Something we didn't talk about, which your page always kind of brings into the forefront with its name itself, Brown Girl Divorce, the cultural stigma, right? Like there's a big deal in brown culture to this day. Doesn't matter if we're North America, we're millennials, whatever. South Asian communities still think that divorce is taboo, right? How are you dealing with it personally? And maybe how are you teaching your audience on how to handle the culturalness of it all?
So yeah, like I think that was a fear for me, like initially trying to step out of my marriage. I was like, what will people say? What will people think of me? What will my parents think? What, even that was a big fear for me. Like, forget the community. I was like, oh no, what are my parents going to say? Because like in our eyes, we're just made to believe that divorce equals failure, and it's not always failing. You're not giving up. You didn't fail. Like, it's just things happen, people change. We fail to recognize who the person in front of us was. um and I think like just talking about it is going to help with this whole cultural stigma, not being ashamed of it, owning it. um like very recently I was at a wedding, and and auntie like asked me, oh, how's your husband? And I was like, or where is he? And I was like, oh, like we've been separated. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, oh, don't worry, it's been so long and I'm happy about it. And I think like just giving someone an answer like that is just so refreshing, because then it automatically takes away shame, that pity away from that situation. Um, but I know that it's very challenging for certain people. I've heard of situations where you are in an abusive situation and your parents still tell you to go back.
Yeah.
At that point, I feel like you kind of just have to look at setting boundaries and being like, you're not the one that's going through this. I'm the one living in this every single day. You either get behind me and support me, or I'm doing this thing on my own, is one of like the best things you can do for yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to live the next 20, 30, 40 years with this man. So it's more important to protect that side of you, and like remove yourself from the culture, the community temporarily if you
Yeah.
have to, if that's an option. Like for instance, myself, I did stick around for a while, but I ended up going to Spain for a couple of years. I'm still in Spain, but for me it was really just refreshing just to get outside and do my own thing and just enjoy lifestyle, a different culture, without having that community in my face all the
Yeah.
time. That's a huge thing that people have to deal with when they find.
Yeah. The community aspect is so nuanced because everybody knows the trope, Desis don't get divorced. That's actually the book that we're reading in October by Shaili Mehta, Indians Don't Get Divorced, for our book club. So if anybody's interested, please sign up for our book club. But the idea is that we don't get divorced, and it's because the families kind of tend to want to hide things, or like, it's what will people say in the community. So their gut reaction is like, nothing's wrong, you're the problem, fix it. I've seen a lot of divorce statistics out there, and like the majority of divorces in the US are filed by women. I want to say like 80% of divorces are filed by women. But in Indian or South Asian culture, it's actually flipped. The majority of divorces are filed by men. So you have to imagine the burden, the drama, the just so much anxiety the woman has to go through from her family, the in-laws family, the fact that she doesn't even have the recourse of divorce in South Asian communities. That stat was very telling to me.
Yeah.
I also like, Manny, what you mentioned too, is taking a break. Oftentimes, again, as I mentioned, me as a coach, as one of these like persons who are out here looking forward, I forget this step. And I think it's so important to take a break, grieve, be in the space that you need to be that's going to help you mentally. And if it's staying away from those annoying aunties,
Yeah.
then by all means, stay away from those annoying aunties. I think that culturally, there's a lot of room to educate our parents and our families and the community at large. Maybe not so much our parents, but for that next generation, like my children or your, younger cousins. And so I'm hoping by the work that you're doing in Brown Girl Divorce, the work that we're doing in Second Time Shaadi, it's really trying to normalize these patterns and just make it so that like, yeah, it happened. Here's how we're going to move on. Here's some tools and resources. And it's just another part of the life experience.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely the new normal, so we've got to change with the times.
Yeah, I love it. So along with that, you mentioned leaving the aunties, but you kind of still need a community or support system to talk through, no matter what stage of this thinking about leaving. I've already left and I'm healing.
Mhm.
So what would you say, Manny, are the role that a support system plays in the healing process? And how can you find the support if maybe you have to leave your friends or family behind because they don't understand your experience or your cultural issues?
So I think one of the most important things is getting a therapist. Um, that
Love it. Huge therapy proponent. Love it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like I had therapy for a year, like almost every second or third week, and it was like tremendous in my healing journey. And even I had a therapist before I ended things because I was so fearful of leaving that I needed a therapist's help to actually leave. And even now, like post 3 years, sometimes I still find myself struggling with some issues. So maybe I don't go as often, but I still stick to therapy. So that's one really important thing. Another factor is, knowing who your friends are and family that you can go to and trust and talk to them. People that make you feel safe and comfortable and give you that space. But also just be respectful. I know like we do sometimes get really repetitive. So just be like mindful of who you're dumping your stuff on and make sure that they have the capacity to handle it at that time. And another thing is just broadening your circles. There's many like online resources through which you can maybe find like-minded women that are going through similar situations. Um, there's also just like trying new activities or old hobbies that you used to be into. And I often go alone to these things because I'm like, oh, I can't find someone to go with me. And I still go for it and do it. And sometimes I don't meet anyone, and other times I come out of it with a new friend. And I learn a new like activity.
So you're teaching like life skills, Manny, because it's like, yeah, we have the therapists, we've got the friends and family we can count on. Thank you for putting in that caveat. Not everybody necessarily has the capacity or bandwidth to handle that, what you're sharing. I'll also say too that I've seen it on the flip side with the dating journey where singles will always like kind of talk to their friends and family. But if they're not in the same situation as you, if they can't empathize or sympathize, yeah, they're an ear to listen, but are they going to give you the advice? Are they going to be that safe space that you need? Likely not. So I like that you mentioned get out there and find new community. Even if you have to do things by yourself, that's okay. Because likely this experience that you just went through is very changing for you as a person. So maybe you need this time to be by yourself, try new activities, meet different types of people to figure out who am I now as I'm navigating through this and coming out the other side, whether it be divorce, a big breakup, there's something big shaking up in your life. There's always a reason or need to have support. How are you finding it? Like you mentioned leaving and creating a new environment for yourself. Now that you're like very much far away in Spain, how are you finding community or support over there?
So what I try to do is like I have my goals. Like I'm trying to learn Spanish. So like I'll go to things like language exchanges. But like even I've been in Toronto for the summer, and I found some language exchanges here, and I forget, like, being in North America is a blessing, like the diversity we have. So that's definitely like there's local spots where they hold these events, and a lot of people are coming from different cities, also trying to make friends. So that's like one way that I build a community. I try to, like go on some tours and try new activities. That is another way. Um, and also, like, I try to say yes to a lot of things that people ask me. It's just like you don't know who you're gonna meet through that person. If anything, like you get to have a fun night anyway. And you never know, a new experience, a new friend can come out of it.
Mindset shift is basically what you're saying. That's what it takes.
Exactly.
Love it. So a couple of more of like those strategies, maybe empowerment strategies you have. So maybe there's people in the audience or somebody's going to watch this later who's feeling trapped. They're in an unhealthy relationship. What are some practical steps or advice that you would give them so that they can empower themselves maybe in the short term and then make actual informed decisions as they think about what they want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think if you're really feeling trapped or stuck, I think a lot of it is being stuck in your own mind. Maybe like talking to a therapist might not be an option. Um, like I think you can talk to your friends. Um, talk if you have kids, talk to your children. Like perhaps maybe they're not even feeling safe in that situation, in that environment. And if people are like getting this bad aura or energy from your spouse, then that's very telling. Sometimes we need that external validation. Like in my marriage, I was very forced to keep quiet, keep things in the household. And because of that, I didn't get that outside perspective that this behavior is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started sharing, they were just like, people were like, what? You put up with that? He said what? He did what? So I think getting that outsider perspective is important. One of my important things that I did was I made a pros and cons list.
Oh.
Like, what are the pros of staying with him and what are the cons? And I was like, I wrote my first few pros that popped into my head, and then I started writing my cons, and the list just kept going and going and going. Like, okay, so why am I with this person? That's something you can do. Obviously, if you've made that decision to leave or you're still unsure, sometimes there's the legal stuff of it too, and the financial matters. You can always go talk to a lawyer. Maybe if you're worried about your partner, if they're abusive, or keep it on the down low. Go and get a consultation. There's a lot of lawyers that offer free consultations. You'll know what's on the line, what you can get, what you're entitled to, just to get a rough idea. And then if you have decided to leave, and again, in some sort of abusive situation, start to gather documents, like take pictures of any financial things, and grab your passport. Make sure you've got your IDs and documents ready. Just little things that just in case things don't go so smoothly when you do decide to break the news.
Yeah. So I heard three things. I heard tools, resources, and I forget the third. So for tools, you mentioned pros and cons list, bounce ideas off of friends and family to get their reactions, to understand. Yeah, I think secrets is a big thing, right? Like we often say this, like if you wouldn't be comfortable discussing something with your grandmother, that's an indication of something not being correct or above board or something, right? So if your situation with your spouse is something you don't want to share with a girlfriend because you're embarrassed or scared, that's very telling.
Yeah.
Wow. Second thing I heard was resources. So lawyer, I love that you mentioned that. I didn't even think of that because this obviously varies by jurisdiction, but I know in America, that if one of the parties contacts an attorney,
Mhm.
even if they don't contract with them, even if they just ask for a consultation, that attorney now has a conflict of interest
Mhm.
and cannot represent your spouse.
Yes.
So I heard this somewhere. They were like, even if you're thinking about getting a divorce, blindly email a bunch of divorce attorneys, because that's just, I mean, that's being vindictive, but it's
Yeah.
something that you can do.
Yeah. But you are dealing with people that are going to be, you know, equally ruthless.
Yeah,
Um,
ruthless, that's the
if
word.
you
Yeah.
contact the top divorce lawyers. It works the same way in Canada as well.
Okay. Another resource, though, apart from the lawyers, I like books, blogs, articles. I'm very much like, I need to see things from different perspectives, and I like a third party opinion. So I think resources in that sense is also very good. But then tying into your third one, which was empowerment, I remembered. The third aspect you mentioned was empowerment. So do you know your financial information? Could you go out and get an apartment if you needed to? And that goes hand in hand with working with the lawyer or asking a lawyer, because I think a lot of women, we're already behind the curve when it comes to financial stuff. That's
Mhm.
like the biggest thing holding us back from making our own decisions and empowering ourselves. So if we know what are we entitled to, we know how much we have in our bank account, which we're like pulling in financial wise, it's going to just empower you to make the decision if and when it's necessary. Love it. So if you have an idea or something is not right, don't ignore it. There are all these ways that you can follow through and see what's happening in my life. Is this normal? What are my next steps?
Mhm. Exactly.
Love it. Manny, how long have you had your Instagram page up?
I think it's been 2+ years now. Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe 2.5 years. It's been wild. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite maybe interactions you've had with either people messaging you in your account, people asking for advice, or and anything like positive or fun from your account
Yeah.
experience?
So I've had numerous people just reach out to me when they're struggling, when they're trying to make that decision. So I kind of just, I don't mind talking to people, and I'll just kind of give them some insight, or maybe like give them some, like, something to think about, like make their mind run in a different direction, as opposed to being in a mindset of like how do I stay in this marriage, when I want to kind of direct them in the direction of maybe you should leave, especially if you're looking up my page, you're
Yeah.
already doing it, you just need a little bit of that nudge. But some of my favorite interactions was, I made a friend through here that came and visited me in Spain. It
Oh,
was really awesome. And another thing was I ended up writing a chapter in a book called The Desi Divorcee, which I think will be released later on towards the end of the year. So that's like 12 different women that came together and wrote a book about their divorce journey. And each story is unique in its own, but also has like underlying things that are very similar. Like you'll see the similar patterns. And so I think it can resonate with a lot of people.
I love that. Definitely let us know when that book comes out, because as I mentioned, we've got the Mindful Dating Book Club. And it's ironic, the book we're reading in October, Indians Don't Get Divorced, is also an anthology, if you will. It's different short stories, but it was written by one author based on theirs. So I can't wait to read your chapter in this book when it comes out.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep you in the loop on that.
And I know when you and I had connected originally, you were mentioning that you were shifting from more of that like advice, or not advice, sorry, that more of that like expressions, those quotes, all of that, into more of a advice, strategic, building a community type thing. So what are future plans for Brown Girl Divorce? What do you want to do? How can this community help you grow?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to just kind of I'll start small. I've got a couple of resources that I'm working on now, that will be available for people to check in on when they're thinking about leaving. Like just making that decision. I know how hard that is, just so I'm creating a resource for that. I'm also just going to appear more on lives now that I've decided that I don't want to be anonymous anymore. I really want to just put myself out there a lot more. Um, and, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to work on a few things. Like, there's lots of ideas running through my head. So just follow my page and yeah, you'll be in the loop.
And keep up with Manny. I love it. So for everybody who's watching today that might be struggling with similar issues or feel like what you're talking about resonates with them, what advice would you give them to kind of start on their path or journey towards healing and figuring things out for themselves?
Ooh, I think just take it one day at a time. Um, there's gonna be really tough days, and give yourself the space and the time you need to go through those emotions. Um, Also, take a trip, get away for a little bit, go visit a friend, go try solo traveling. There's lots of like these like trip groups, that you go with other females. Um, get back into the things that you liked. I think often we give up on some of those hobbies when we get caught up in the abuse and all that. And just try be open and try new things, discover yourself. If reading is your thing, there's lots of books you can read. The South Asian community is growing in that realm, and there's lots of resources. Like, we don't have to always look at what's happening in the Western world. Like, there's lots of South Asians that are doing amazing things, podcasts, um, just anything. Like, most of all, be gentle on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, when you're dealing with something like this, your entire personality gets wrapped up in that anxiety that you forget what makes you you.
Mm-hmm.
So connect with your inner core, and hopefully that path will emerge.
Exactly.
Manny, thank you so much for an amazing conversation, very enlightening and empowering for not just everybody who's like on the call today, but I think as we move forward, normalizing the conversation and all the hard work that you're doing is really going to help our community. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you again for having me. This was really lovely.
Everybody who's joined us today, please do follow Brown Girl Divorce on Instagram. Reach out to Manny if you have any questions or looking for advice. And then for anybody who's already out here dating again and have healed, Single to Shaadi has an option called Second Time Shaadi. And we do work with people who are divorced, widowed, have kids, older, whatever the case may be, because we understand that most of these matrimonial things that are out there are not catering for people in your situation and in similar situations. And so we want to be that space and help normalize it for everybody. So thanks again, Manny. Thanks everybody for joining. Bye.
Bye.